Bold predictions week one, not quite as dominant as we wanted. Little sloppy, not great execution. I thought maybe we would get a little bit more momentum going for the second half of the show, but it didn't happen. But you know what? That's what preseason is for. And on Freaky Friday, the podcast daily, we get a second chance. It's week 2. It's Ohio State. It's Western Michigan. It's Saturday night in the Horseshoe. And Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham, and me, Austin Ward, we're going to be way better and way more efficient on Saturday with our bold predictions than we were in week 1. Let's get it, boys. Bill, kick it off.
You know, I'm not as optimistic as you, but hopefully we have a good week. I think Ohio State will want to probably make a little bit of a statement with his rushing attack this week after it looking a little clunky to start the last game and looking very good, I thought, in the second half. Western Michigan's run defense, I don't think is anything special. Even against Wisconsin, like some of the underlying numbers were quite favorable for Wisconsin running the ball, even if that game wasn't a blowout like people expected it to be. So I think we see Ohio State's first 300-yard rushing game in like a year and a half. The last time they did it was in November of 2022 against Indiana. That game, it was like the snow game, I think, when they put up a bunch of points. They ran for 300 yards in that game. They haven't done it since. They only rushed for 200 yards twice last year, which I didn't realize. So they'll want to get that on track. So I think we'll see a 300-yard rushing game from Ohio State. And I think that James Peoples will go over 100 yards, given, I think, the state of the game. And I will say that Quinshon Judkins goes over 100 yards. And I will do another drill down that Peoples, Judkins, and Travion Henderson will all have at least one carry of 40 yards or more.
Oh, wow.
Save the boldest for last.
That's right.
Like that.
That James Peoples touchdown run in the opener was about as electrifying. What was it, 4 yards? Like, about as good as you can ever see for that a play that short.
Pretty nice jump cut. Yeah. I get why they call him Mini JK.
Which is weird since he's bigger than JK.
They might have to tweak that nickname at some point. Berm, where are you going first?
Bigger JK? That doesn't have quite the same ring.
It's just new JK is what he is.
New JK. I want to be clear that I was a Jeremiah Smith drop away from a touchdown on the second play of the game last week, and Brandon Innes was this close to breaking a punt return for a touchdown last week. So I actually don't feel like I was so far off in week 1, but I'm not confident heading into week 2 because, I don't believe in almosts, and it's time to deliver some goods. Wisconsin I don't think they completed a pass of more than 20 yards against Western Michigan last week, which is whatever. I mean, I think
that says more about Wisconsin, I think, than it does Western.
Well, they tried it 3 times. They tried it 3 times. Western Michigan is a really veteran team. Like their safety, Tate Halleck, is in his 6th year. He's a former Michigan State player. Their other safety next to him, who, like, those two are their leading tacklers. Like they have a safety net back there. Like, it's a safety driven defense is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, really?
But I think Ohio State's going to take some shots.
Double SDDs.
Yeah, double STDs. What? Safety, not TDs, SDDs.
S double Ds.
Thank you.
Got him?
Yeah, got it. Yeah, I really took a turn.
It's Freaky Friday, baby.
I'm going exactly the opposite of Bill's BP, and gonna go. It's gonna be a career high in passing yards for Will Howard on Saturday. I think his career high is 311. So it's not.
I'll just check the tape when you predicted that a week ago.
It's not a crazy number. But I didn't officially say that he was going to have, a career high last week. I said Ohio State would have 350 passing yards. I didn't say it would be all Will Howard. But I think he's going to break his career high. I think it's 311. Again, I don't.
I'm looking it up right now.
I don't know if I'm accurate, but I think Ohio State's going to have 4 passes of more than 40 yards in this game.
327 last year against Texas.
327. So give me 350 from Will Howard. 4 balls of more than 40 yards to be connected on by Ohio State. And let's say 5 passing touchdowns for Will Howard. Let's just really dive in to the Big Willie style.
Okay.
Great
That
album.
is quite a lot. I knew that this was happening because I was at the game and watched it, but it was still wild to see Will Howard's passing chart on Saturday and only have 2 throws of over 20 yards, air yards. Like, that's just not Ohio State at its most explosive offense. And I get why, because there's an emphasis on running the football and developing that part of the offense. And I think maybe an assumption that some of those deep shots are going to be there. But I did think, Berm, to your point, like, we didn't see that part of Ohio State a week ago because they don't need they don't feel the need to do that at this point. At some point they're going to. Well, that I actually don't know if that's going to happen tomorrow or not, because I think maybe there's still an element of building the offensive line and the rushing attack that takes precedent over that. Like, I wanted to make the same prediction as you, but I don't know if that's actually going to happen against Western Michigan. I think they might wait until after the off week.
I think that's fair. I think that the off week coming when it does allows them to get creative this weekend, do some stuff vertically, and then worry about the run game once Donovan Jackson's back and healthy. And then you can let the offensive line kind of gel from there heading into Marshall. But I think this weekend, actually, with the setup of the schedule, allows them to be a little bit more freewheeling this weekend than they would have been otherwise.
I agree. I think that's why I want to see some of the other wrinkles to the run game, which are also extensions of the passing attack. Something like, I don't know, a pop pass, or, maybe even jet sweeps. Those are more traditional runs, but I think it's going to lead to touchdowns for both Brandon Ennis and Emeka Ibuka, probably both in the first quarter. I'm going to drill down on that. It doesn't sound all that bold to predict that, but eventually there will be 4 touchdowns for them over the course of the game. And I think they're going to be just destroying people in the red zone. And I don't think it's going to be with deep shots, but I think they're going to be the focal points. I think that's the next wave. Maybe it's, again, me thinking about some of the stuff that we saw in spring and during training camp with the creativity of the attack there. But I think this is the week that they get to that next step. Chip Kelly starts dialing up that a little bit and getting to the perimeter. And as they continue to grow and expand the arsenal, I think this is the direction they go this week.
So you're saying 4 total touchdowns for Ennis and Ibuka in this game?
Yes, sir.
See, that's pretty bold. Ennis has 1 career touchdown, and it was in the fourth quarter at Purdue. So to say he's getting one in the first quarter tomorrow night seems bold to me, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the arbiter of all that is bold, but it feels bold.
Well, when I said it initially, it didn't sound all that bold, and I just tried to add a little more spice, a little more pepper, a little more spice in the pepper as we kept going on. So I think eventually we got there, and it's a little habanero now.
It's a little habanero. I also had a Brandon Ennis bold P. That was just going to be that he scored 2 touchdowns, but now I'm gonna tweak it because I don't want to piggyback entirely off of your bold P. So here's the Brandon Ennis prediction. He will have 3 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving, and 1 on special teams.
Ooh, little hat trick.
A little hat trick. Yeah, and he'll get in a fight too. It'll be a Gordie Howe hat trick.
Wow. You came away pretty impressed on Wednesday night from the Brandon Ennis conversation, didn't you?
Very much so, and also I am taking to heart a little bit Ryan Day, I think, being pretty emphatic about how important Brandon Ennis is to the offense in addition to special teams. They only got him 1 target last week. I think they'll want to ramp that up a little bit. I agree with you, Austin, that I think we'll see either him or Emeka get more involved in the run game, maybe both, but I think those wrinkles will start to come out a little bit. So I could see Brandon Ennis maybe getting a rushing touchdown on a reverse type of thing. And then I think they'll want to throw him the ball a little more than they did. And I'm not going to predict a punt return for Brandon Ennis every single week. This might be I think this will be my one time doing it this year, because to do it every week is a little silly, but I very much, I think he's
I caught a stray there. My goodness.
Well, it's just like, if you believe it in your heart that it's going to happen, but you can't come with every bold P and say it's going to happen. You got to mix it up a little bit. So I don't think I'll predict it after this one, even though I think it will happen moving forward if it doesn't happen this week. Western Michigan will be dumb enough to punt him the ball, and then he will return one for a touchdown and score 2 other times on offense, 1 rushing, 1 receiving.
I also feel like we should put some sort of moratorium on how often we can predict a punt return for a touchdown, because A, it hasn't happened in 10 years. B, it does seem like sort of a cheap out every time we do this episode of
I haven't done it in like a year.
But also, I'm predicting a punt return for a touchdown for Brandon Ennis and a kickoff return for a touchdown by Jaden Ballard in this game. Ohio State has gone 10 years.
Streaks.
Both streaks are finished on Saturday night. Do you remember the old days? Urban Meyer used to call them the freaks, the special teams freaks.
The freak show.
Though the freaks come out at night, and the freaks are coming out at night on Saturday. It's been 14 years since the kick return streak was started, 10 years since the punt return streak began. Both of them get kaput on Saturday night by Brandon Ennis and Jaden Ballard. And when it's all said and done, and Ohio State walks away from the game on Saturday night, I want everyone in America to remember who told you this was going to happen. This guy.
As soon as I get off the punt return, kickoff return, special teams bandwagon, it's going to happen. This is the last time I'm ever predicting anything to do with a return game, because it's going to happen at some point this season, and we know that, and it feels cheap and inauthentic to keep doing it otherwise. But this week, I'm saying both of them are happening at the same game, not the same time. That's impossible.
That'd be cool, though.
Yeah,
I'd love to see it. 2 footballs at the same time. That's maybe they could make the game more safer by separating. You have a punt return to one side and a kick to the other. That'd be great.
I think they'd run into each other, wouldn't they?
Maybe. Who knows? That would be part of the fun. So that streak is going to come to an end, and a new one is beginning. And that streak is Caden Curry forcing fumbles. It's just going to happen every week with regularity. So I'll stop predicting it at some point once you get used to seeing it. But after last week's performance, I'm enamored by that play. Berman and I also talked about it on Thursday, so I won't do that again here on the podcast daily, but the extra effort on that play is remarkable. And even if he winds up being 15 to 20 snaps throughout the course of this year, which I think would maybe be fine if he's playing at 110% and nonstop motor, it's going to be bad for any quarterbacks who try to run away from him. He's going to run them down. He's going to hit them hard, and the ball is going to come loose. I actually think he'll turn a couple of those plays into sacks. So it's not just going to be a forced fumble. There's also going to be 2 sacks for Caden Curry off the bench in this game. But I think this time the fumble will be scooped up by Arvell Reese, and it will also go for a touchdown.
Keep stealing my thunder.
Well, that's what I famously steal people's thoughts.
Yeah, you do. Is Caden Curry gonna recover one of his own fumbles or what?
Not this week. That will not be. That will not be until Iowa.
Oh, the Iowa game. He's going to score a touchdown.
Yes.
Did he play offense in high school at all, Brian?
He played like some fullback.
Okay.
Oh,
even better.
Shouldn't have told me that.
I guess he played offense. He's on that for Ohio State too, right?
Yeah, he worked in that spot for the Buckeyes. So
yeah, I like that. I have an Arvell Reese prediction as well. Western Michigan, I think is going to run the ball a decent amount, if only to try to play keep away from Ohio State. So that will provide ample opportunities for the linebackers to be involved. And I think Arvell Reese gets a double-digit tackle game, so 10 tackles for Arvell. But I think 3 of them are going to be tackles for loss, and I think one of them is going to result in a forced fumble. So I see Arvell Reese filling up the stat sheet a little bit. I think he will. I believe Ryan Day when he says that Arvell Reese has earned more playing time with the way that he played last week. So maybe it's Sonny Styles who still ends up playing the most linebacker snaps. But I think it could be Arvell Reese because, one, he'll play in a rotation with the starters. And then if the game gets out of hand, they'll still have him out there because he needs to play. So it could be an opportunity for him to actually lead the team in linebacker snaps as well. And he'll make the most of it. I think he'll be flying around all over the place. I think it'll be a continuation of what we saw last week. And he will lead the team in tackles with 10. Have 3 TFLs and knock a ball loose in the course of doing that.
Arvell's a havoc creator. You could just sort of get that sense about him that he's just a guy.
He looked very relaxed.
Yeah, he did. He just looked like
you look very relaxed.
just like Berm does.
Yeah,
your camera zoom back out or something. You're like,
I'm pretty relaxed. No. I'm just decided to sit back in my chair as I take in all of this. I mean, do we need to be uptight on the show? I don't think so.
I don't think anyone would accuse us of doing that.
I don't know. I was reading Thursday morning's podcast daily comments, and people think I'm uptight. I'm not at all. I just demand perfection from everyone around me. all the time.
I'm sorry to disappoint you.
What I want to see on Saturday and what I'm going to see on Saturday are probably different things. Earlier in the week, I predicted a 45 to 0 score. So as we've done this show, I've already predicted 7 touchdowns. So that can't happen. So when I'm talking about a lack of perfection, I'm speaking really at myself, because now I have to amend my score prediction. So now I'm talking 56-0 Ohio State, because there's one more touchdown coming. And that is from Caleb Downs, who will make his real announcement to Ohio Stadium that he is here. I don't know. It might be on a strip sack fumble recovery, where he does all of it. I could see something like that occurring, but I do think we are going to see the first real glimpse of what Caleb Downs brings to this Ohio State defense on Saturday night, because I agree Western Michigan is going to try to run the ball. They're going to try to keep it away from the Ohio State offense. They're going to try to, they ran, I think, 3.6 yards a carry against Wisconsin, but they ran it 35 times or something like that, just to try to.
Yeah, it was 65% of the time they ran the ball. Yeah.
Right, just trying to drain clock. Ohio State's going to need to be aggressive to prevent 4 yards every carry. So I think you're going to see a lot of what we saw last week with Lathan Ransom shooting into the backfield at snaps. And I think we'll see it from both sides, because the Buckeyes are not concerned at all about Western Michigan's receivers beating them one-on-one. And you have good enough corners to put those guys on an island. Send the blitzing safeties and watch Caleb Downs rack up numbers. And one of those numbers is going to lead to a touchdown some way or somehow. It might be a tip ball off someone's helmet again. I don't know, but Caleb Downs will find the end zone. And that's touchdown number 8 for Ohio State on their way to 56-0 win over the Western Michigan Broncos.
I wonder, Caleb Downs played fine last week. He didn't do anything spectacular, which I think we've seen him do that already in his career at Alabama. And maybe we just assumed it would be that easy for him to come do that at Ohio State. But I think, if anything, we talked about this offensively with the first time debuts for Quinshon Judkins and Will Howard and Seth McLaughlin and Tegra Shabola. I wonder if we didn't get a chance to talk to Caleb Downs this week. I wonder if he felt any nerves going out there. Seth McLaughlin's played at Alabama. He's played in the college football playoff, and he's saying on Wednesday night after practice that he teared up and was getting emotional. And this thing was new for them to be playing at Ohio State, to be playing in the Horseshoe. Yes, it's Akron, and yes, they're going to play more important games. But I wonder, sometimes we do forget that they are 18 to 22-year-olds and demanding perfection when they're doing something for the first time, which, again, this is what they were doing. The first time playing in Jim Knowles' defensive system, first time wearing that uniform, going through pregame, that can impact it. Again, Caleb Downs played fine, but I think that sometimes we overlook that element of week one, and that now I asked Will Howard about that too, Bill, on Tuesday. Now you get a routine. You've done this all before. Maybe they'll settle into that quickly and it'll all be a distant memory, but openers are tricky, and the reasons can be different for everyone.
Yeah, and I think if Caleb Downs missed 2 or 3 tackles in that game, I'm very much willing to just chalk that up to kind of first game stuff. Even for a player as talented as Caleb Downs is, you get a little amped up. You also don't tackle a whole lot in camp, so missed tackles tend to spike in the first week or so of the season. So I think he'll be totally fine, and I think I'm in agreement with Berm too, that I believe Caleb Downs will have a little bit of a bounce back from what was not a bad debut, just a fine debut, but maybe not exactly what people were expecting given his credentials.
Yeah, that's fair.
Perfection.
Right.
I missed the mark.
The show's been perfection so far.
Has it been? I don't know.
We're
trying. It's a bounce back from a rough week one is what we're trying to get done here. I was way off the mark with the tight ends. I said they were going to have 3 touchdowns. They didn't even have 3 targets. They had 1, and it was an incomplete pass over the head of Will Kazmarek. I think that'll change this week. Maybe not with touchdowns. I'm going to downgrade it. I think that the tight ends will have 6 targets, and they will have 5 receptions. They will all go for first downs. Don't know if they're going to score. I'm not going to drill down far enough on that to say that they will. But that group, I think, was maligned a little bit in the opener for they weren't noticeable because they didn't have anything in the stat sheet really. But both G. Scott and Will Kazmarek graded out as champions. G. Scott's run blocking grade was among the highest, or not, if not the highest, on the team in week 1. So that group, so they played up to the expectations of Ohio State, and maybe not for some of us on the outside. But I think that this is another part of the offense that you'll start to see, if not stretching the field, using the tight ends more. So I'll give them 6 targets from Will Howard and 5 catches, and a productive day as pass catchers.
I think that one of my favorite things to watch as the season unfolds is how the offense changes based on which recruits are visiting. And Ohio State will have Max Sutter, who's a top 3 tight end in the country, visiting on Saturday night. He's from Illinois in the class of 2026. He's a player who visited Auburn last week. They really like this kid. And he told me one of the primary thing he's looking for this weekend is how Ohio State uses the tight ends. I'm like, yeah, well, they use them all the time. They're always on the field, but maybe they don't get targeted a lot. And we've seen in the past, like last year when Nate Roberts would visit, it seemed like those days Cade Stover would have a little bit more uptick in productivity in the passing game. So I do wonder if those things are ever actually thought about at Ohio State, when they're working in the game plans, especially against a team like Western Michigan. Do you guys think that they're hey, do you think Keenan Bailey is hey, Chip, by the way, I got a dude visiting this weekend and we need to throw the freaking ball to the tight end? Do you think those conversations happen, yes or no?
Do you mean when Chris Henry's in attendance and they dial up a tunnel screen for Jeremiah Smith on the second play of the game, that kind of thing?
That kind of thing, potentially, yes.
Yeah, I think games like this, I think that kind of stuff is in their head.
Yeah. I don't think that you do it for the talent equated games, but when it's not, you can maybe showcase something different. So I'm glad that you said that, Berm. That makes me feel even better about this bold prediction coming true on Saturday night. I feel great now. I hope you do too.
It's I mean, if we were grading today's boldness factors, that's definitely the lowest on the low end of.
Well, I don't have to escalate throughout the show. I started off pretty hot.
I think that's sort of the whole shtick, is that we're supposed to get progressively spicier. If they did hot wings or hot ones, whatever that show is, where it started hot and then they all of a sudden at the end, we're just eating,
crackers?
McDonald's nuggets. I don't know that the show would have the same impact. We're supposed to ramp it up. Also, if Sydney Sweeney wants to come on this show and do bold predictions, we'd like to have her on the show. If I have to give away hot sauce in order to do it, I'll do it.
I have a joke for that ties into something that was said in the beginning of the show, but I won't say it.
I think we can figure out what the initials stand for, and then we can wrap up on Freaky Friday. Berm still hasn't figured out what you actually said, though. So
do you guys think that we should turn one of these shows into a show where we just eat hot stuff and spicy food? Do you think people would watch it if we just were
I think they would watch it, but that doesn't mean we should do it.
Yeah. No, I don't.
Remember when Kevin Noon had those 300 pounds of pickles last year?
I think he was just hungry, though. That wasn't a stunt. He was just feeling a little peckish.
Craving some
wild.
Pickles.
Yeah. That was wild.
We already have shows where we drink. I don't know that we need to spin off into hot wings.
Yeah, that's true. Do you guys, Berm, you said you're what? What's your score?
It's now 56-0. I have a tough time seeing Western Michigan scoring. I don't see anybody on their offense that is scary. I mean, I like their quarterback. Hayden Wolf, he's a 60-year guy. You've got veterans on this team, but I don't see anybody that has the ability to get behind the Ohio State defense.
What's your score, Austin?
52-6.
Okay. I think they put up 70.
I'm going for the 70 burger.
70 burger. I also my score is 70-14, and I think if I'm wrong, it'll be the 14. It might be too high.
Yeah, I don't. Again, I'm trying, and I said this at Roosters earlier this week, but every week the scores for these games were it's 80-0 Buckeyes, and then every week the Buckeyes come out and it's 17-3 at half, and you're like, oh crap, and then it ends up being 49-6 or 52-6, and then you feel somewhat vindicated, but at the same time you're like, man, that's not how I thought it was going to go at all. So I'm trying not to go crazy, but I agree. Like if the Buckeyes score the first 3 times they have the ball, they'll get 70 points. So
Right. I think it's going to be one of those days, like the Toledo 2022 game, which was 77-21. It's kind of absurd.
yeah, but there's no Daquan Finn on the other side here for
Correct.
Western Michigan.
Right.
There sure isn't. But we get to find out tomorrow night. We'll see who's right, who's wrong, and who is the king of bold predictions for week number 2, Ohio State, Western Michigan. Prime time in the Horseshoe. Can't wait to be back there for the second game of the season for Ohio State. Thanks for joining us on Freaky Friday for bold predictions on the Podcast Daily. That's Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. Have a great weekend.